Now look around the room you're in. Choose any item. It doesn't matter what it is. The phone, the laptop, the lamp, the chair you're sitting on. That object, or the materials inside it, probably passed through a shipping port somewhere in its life, with a 90% chance of that. No airplane, no car, a seaport, a dock, a location at the edge of a harbor where huge steel boxes are loaded on and off ships. Most people don't even think about them. But you'll see in this video why ports are fundamental to the functioning of the world. And that is exactly what makes some investors so incredibly rich. Let me give you an example of that. The Port of Singapore handles about 37 million containers a year. It makes billions in revenue. And believe it or not, the owner and operator of it is not a government department. It's a publicly traded company. That's the pattern. The physical infrastructure that moves the global economy, the ports, the terminals, the cranes, the docks, has been bought up, packaged, and turned into a financial asset, generating commissions every time a container moves. And most people don't know who owns it. That's the whole point of this spectacular video. Not shipped, not the logistics, but who, really, owns the docks, how they came to be owned, how they were invested in, and why a piece of land on the waterfront can be worth more than almost any other asset in the world. If this type of content helps you finally understand how million-dollar businesses work, subscribe now. Already working on the next mega videos. First, a useful distinction. When people mention a port, they generally refer to the entire package: the harbor, the land, the infrastructure, the cranes, the storage yards, the customs operations. The reality is that ports are split up into layers of ownership and operation that often have little to do with each other. But the land itself, the waterfront, the seabed rights, the access roads, is often owned by a port authority. This could be the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, or the Port of Los Angeles in the US. In the UK, this could be a trust port, a municipal authority, or a fully private company. In Singapore, it's PSA International, a state-owned enterprise that operates terminals in dozens of countries. Private investors typically don't purchase the land. They acquire a concession to run a specific terminal on that land for 20, 30, or 50 years. You do not own the dock. For the life of the agreement, you get to work the dock, collect the fees, and oversee all that goes on there. When the concession period expires, it reverts to the original owner. So, at least for now, every container that comes through your terminal, you make money on. But it is geography that really distinguishes ports from other infrastructure. You can't build a competing port next to an existing one. There's no access to the waterfront. Over the years, the channel has been deepened by dredging. It took generations to build the rail and road links. When you buy the right to run a big port terminal, you are buying something that can't be physically replicated. There is no other choice. The ships have to come to you. A revenue model at a port terminal is not complex. You charge for everything that comes through your door. The primary fee is the Terminal Handling Charge, or THC. There is a handling fee for each container that passes through the terminal. That fee is for loading it onto a ship, taking it off a ship, moving it around the yard. At major ports worldwide, the charge is about $150 to $300 a container for a standard 20-foot box. Bigger boxes, dangerous goods, refrigerated boxes, they cost more. Times that by the number of containers passing through a large terminal. Millions a year at the best facilities, and the gross revenue numbers get big quick. There are also handling fees and storage fees. If a container is sitting in your yard past the free days, you charge demurrage. Demurrage is one of those charges that sounds small and adds up viciously. In the supply chain chaos of 2021 and 2022, containers sat for weeks at ports waiting for trucks and trains that weren't available, and some shippers were paying thousands of dollars per day per container in demurrage. For port operators, it was a windfall. The congestion wasn't their fault, but they collected it anyway. An unplanned, unearned windfall. The Port of Los Angeles logged record revenues in 2021, not because they carried more freight, because the cargo clogged up. Every time you bought something in a container, someone paid for that box at a harbor. You know who and how now. If you want to keep seeing behind the curtain, subscribe. A few names dominate the ownership map of global port infrastructure, most of which would be unknown to most people. Headquartered in Singapore, PSA International operates terminals in 27 countries in Asia, Europe, the Americas, and Africa. Temasek, Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, owns it and has stakes in Singapore Airlines, DBS Bank, and a few dozen other things. PSA moved more than 90 million TEUs, the international standard measurement for container traffic, in 2023. Worldwide, across all its sites, Hutchison Ports is a unit of Hong Kong conglomerate, CK Hutchison, and operates 52 ports in 27 countries. It is the world's largest independent port operator by number of terminals. In 2025, CK Hutchison agreed to sell Hutchison Ports, including its stake in the Panama Canal ports, to a consortium led by American asset management firm BlackRock for some $23 billion. That deal stirred political controversy on a number of fronts, as the transfer of ports on both ends of the Panama Canal to a U.S.-linked buyer had obvious geopolitical weight. This list shows that the infrastructure of the world's ports is in very few hands. Sovereign wealth funds, state-owned enterprises, and large infrastructure managers between them control a disproportionate share of the terminals through which the world's physical economy flows. The local fragmented port of the 20th century has largely converged into global portfolios. Depending who you ask, that's either efficient or worrying. From afar, the ports look safe. They are monopolies. They've got captive customers. The cargo has to go somewhere. But the risks are real, and a few have blindsided operators in recent years. Work is the obvious one. Ports are very unionized, and the unions have real leverage. A strike at a major port doesn't just affect the port, it backs up the entire supply chain that feeds through it. Months of negotiations between workers at West Coast U.S. ports created uncertainty, causing shippers to reroute cargo to East Coast ports for much of 2023. The West Coast ports lost volume they never regained. In 2024, workers at Gulf and East Coast ports went on a brief strike before a deal was struck. Each of these events directly cost port operators money and damaged their relationships with shipping lines who need predictability above almost anything else. Third is automation, which has a dual effect. Fully automated terminals where yard cranes and yard vehicles are operated without human operators dramatically reduce labor cost and increase throughput. But the capital outlay is enormous, and the transition is operationally difficult. The ports that have, like the Maasvlakte terminal in Rotterdam, are more efficient than anything run on full human labor. Ports that have tried and struggled have experienced cost overruns and performance problems that took years to fix. It's not an easy step up. It's a whole different way to run a facility. The thing I really struggle with when it comes to ports is this. They're the most essential infrastructure on Earth for how modern economies actually work, more than airports, more than roads, more than power plants in terms of sheer volume of physical stuff they move. Yet the way they are owned is virtually invisible to the people who depend on them. But the people collecting those fees are in many cases sovereign wealth funds from Singapore and Dubai, infrastructure managers in Toronto and Sydney, and now increasingly the same big American asset managers that already own pieces of your pension, your mortgage, and the building your office is in. The consolidation is real. Whether that's a problem or not depends on what you think infrastructure ownership should look like. But knowing it's happening seems like the minimum. Register. And in the next video, I will take you to a place no one has ever imagined. Ports are the infrastructure of the old economy. The next video is about the infrastructure of the new. A space launch pad. A piece of real estate that looks up to the sky and is almost worthless on paper, but has become one of the most strategically contested real estate assets on Earth. It's all about who owns the launch pad. SpaceX, NASA, private equity funds, other countries' governments. Everyone wants control of access to orbit. Next up is that video.